I actually made a different video about this and decided not to post it. It ended up being about half an hour long, and it just seemed like it was too long. And I just wanted to cover some things with you guys just for my own research. And maybe you guys can correct me in the comments and show me if I'm missing something. Now, I have to say that I've made um, quite a few comments and thoughts about Justice Antonin Scalia. I believe there's been an overwhelming consensus, for the most part, that Antonin Scalia, before his death, was uh, regarded as the most constitutional judge on the panel. Now, I can't speak for everyone else, but I have to be honest. Um, I I myself don't keep a crazy amount of time devoted to following the Supreme Court justices. I often just check out cases here or there that are of pretty good significance and kind of keep an eye on them and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know enough information. I don't follow these guys all that closely, and I mean, this country is in chaos and there's too many things going on. I, for the most part, have been trying. Well, I initially intended my channel to cover things related to this United Nations push of Agenda 21. All right, that's pretty much what I'm trying to do. I've noticed now sometimes every once in a while I will do a different thing, like say about some technology or something, because I think it's important to keep an eye on these things. Um, but I do think I'm going to try my best to keep my focus on the big picture of this Agenda 21 thing. There's a lot of things that I've posted videos about that I don't know, that kind of go off the topic a little bit. There's so many things that could pertain to this stuff. It's kind of hard to stay focused on what's really important and what I really want to expose in this thing. All right. But what I want to say is, when I actually went and looked um, into Antonin Scalia and what's been surrounding him and his stance on a lot of things, I'm starting to get painted a very different picture of what the real story was here. Now, what we have here is one of the many videos out there um, about how Antonin Scalia died. When he died, he was with this secret society of elite hunters. And all of the secret society was apparently a real thing, and apparently it was really connected to Bohemian Grove. Now, I have to be honest, I haven't looked into Bohemian Grove that much myself. I know there's people who cover this stuff extensively. I know there's resources out there that I can look to find this stuff, and maybe at some point I will, but right now that's just not where I want to focus my time on. But basically, this Bohemian Grove is like this ritual type of society thing where the rich and elite get together every so often and pretty much commit every sin in the book. So that in itself kind of raised a little red flag for me. And I thought, okay, this is kind of weird, but maybe this is just one of those things that these elite people do. Because don't kid yourself, this man was a Supreme Court justice, so he had the final say in what goes on in perhaps the most powerful nation in the planet. Okay, so this man was definitely one of the elites. Good or bad, whatever, this man had a lot of power. That's all I'm saying. Okay? Now, I guess I'll come back over here. You guys are going to have to bear with me while I find these things, but it's just some stuff that I want to get into, and hopefully I won't take too much time. But you'll have to bear with me while I find this stuff. But, see if or you know what? Hold on. Let's go back over here. I'm sorry. I'll go back, and I'm going to put links to all of this stuff that I'm showing y'all. I'm not going to play any of it because it'll end up being a way too long video, and I'm already yapping too much, to be perfectly honest. I don't want to keep y'all stuck listening to this for forever. Oh, I always do that. I did this when I made this last time, but I made a video over here, and so it seems like it's only been days since Antonin Scalia's death. That when Scalia, after Antonin Scalia's death, Dow Chemical decided to settle a suit for almost $1 billion. Right? Almost $1 billion. Okay? And the reason that they decided to go ahead and settle, well, according to them, was not because they were guilty, but because Antonin Scalia was no longer on the panel. They felt like there was no point pursuing litigation in the matter because they already knew that they were going to lose because he wasn't there anymore. Now, some of you may, because I think a lot of people looked at this and they just, because that figure is so huge, I think a lot of people, including myself, I'm guilty of this as well. I saw that big figure and I really didn't catch the most important line of this story. Dow Chemical. Okay? Now, a lot of you may be familiar with Dow Chemical. I think there's quite a few people who are. I also think that there was a lot of people like myself who aren't too incredibly familiar with this company. So I decided just to do some quick research, and I came across a couple of other things that I thought were pretty interesting. Now let me hop over here again real quick. I'm just going to try to jump through this stuff for y'all. Sorry guys. I could go through this much big tedious process and make this a lot less annoying for you guys, but this is just easier for me. So I hope you guys So bear with me.
This is just what we call field.
Now, I may. No, I won't play this. I'll leave a link so you can watch for yourself. But I'm just showing you this. That this is a video by RT, and it's talking about Monsanto, which most of us have heard of, and it's also talking about Dow Chemical fighting against GMO labeling activists. Now, actually, I am going to play. I'm sorry, I am going to play a bit of this because I want to show you how I jumped to point A to point B, and then we'll move on to the next thing. But check this out.
Originally, try that. And then this is some chicories and escarole. This is what we harvested today for sure.
Name a vegetable. It grows on Sherry's farm outside of Portland. And it's all organic, as Sherry raises her eyebrows, even at a suggestion she could use genetically modified seeds for her products.
There's nothing that they're genetically engineering that would be of any benefit to me or any of my customers. We grow really healthy crops, really healthy soil, really healthy food. There are too many unknowns. I think the technology is way too new, and people have been selectively breeding and farmer breeding efforts for thousands of years.
But despite efforts of Sherry and other private farmers to sell healthy food to people of Oregon, its stores are still filled with GMO products, something these campaigners are not happy with. This fishy apple may look like a post-apocalyptic mutant joke, but in fact, it depicts the genuine concerns of the people of Oregon. They believe that the food they're eating is not safe enough, and they believe that they have a right to know what they'll be having on their tables. Hence, the name for the campaign, Oregon Has a Right to Know. Parading the streets of Portland on tractors.
What makes you think you have the right to know?
Or attracting familiar faces to support them.
If there's nothing wrong with GMOs, why not put it on the label? Made with GMOs!
These activists use different means to get their message across, that food containing GMO must be labeled.
What Measure 92 does is just adds a couple of words to existing food labels to inform consumers if their food is genetically engineered. American food companies already tell consumers in 64 countries around the world if their food is genetically engineered. So all we're saying is, if you can do it for them, you should do it for us.
There had been 3 nationwide attempts to slap a label on GMO food before. All failed, courtesy of companies like Monsanto and DuPont, financing the opposition to such initiatives. And this time, things are not looking good on...
You heard that right. They mentioned right there Monsanto and DuPont, right? And these people, and just to fight to keep Oregon from getting their food labeled so people know what's in it, the people who want to know spent $6 million. These companies, DuPont and Monsanto, and they mentioned later in the video, Dow Chemical, spent $16.3 million in Oregon alone to try to get their push to keep people in Oregon from knowing what they're eating. Okay. So I wanted to point out that this company that just took this it was almost $1 billion hit. Okay. This is a company that is apparently one of the big 3 that is tied in to these big giant chains involved in GMOs and agricultures and biochem and just all sorts of crazy stuff. Now, the actual lawsuit against Dow Chemical was about price-fixing polyurethane, which is used for all sorts of stuff. But this is the same company that's doing this stuff. Okay? And I don't want to get off topic too much, but I do want to make this point real quick. As they showed, 3 states have failed. Okay? To get their GMOs labeled because DuPont, Dow Chemical, and Monsanto are pouring all this money into trying to stop it. Vermont actually succeeded, and they are actually labeling their GMO food. If you don't know what the GMO law is that our government made last year, you really need to read it and find out the real details of it, because it's actually quite disturbing. Well, ever since Vermont passed this law, and now customers can go find out what they're actually eating with this GMO stuff. You can go back and look at my other videos. They're actually saying now the government wants to pass a law that just straight up bars all states from being able to label their GMO, genetically modified food, right? But they're telling America that there's nothing wrong with GMOs and that they're safe to eat. If this is in fact true, does it make any sense that they want to make this big push so you're not allowed to know what you're eating? Wouldn't that imply the fact that they don't want you to know what you're eating? That there's actually something wrong with it? Otherwise, why would it matter? So I just wanted to get that out there. So they're talking about Monsanto. That's the big name that definitely pretty much everybody knows who's paying attention to this GMO stuff. But they also mention Dow Chemical and DuPont. Okay, so let's see if this, I don't know if I have a video saved for this, so you're going to have to bear with me. Right here. Now we have, and I'm sorry, this may actually turn into a long video again, but there's a couple of clips in these videos that I feel are important for Americans to hear. Now, real quick, what this is talking about, Dow and DuPont, and you see that it says the largest criminal merger in history. So, not only do we have a company that's fighting, who's deeply involved in agriculture and what's going on with these GMOs and Dow Chemical, not only are they just had to pay this $1 billion settlement because Antonin Scalia was no longer on the panel. And keep in mind, they make like $40 billion a year on their own. They're merging with DuPont, right? And these were the two other companies besides Monsanto that want to keep you from knowing what you're ingesting into your body, even though that it's safe. Now I'm going to play a clip from this video so you guys can get a real clear understanding of what a big deal this is.
Since the Gilded Age of the early 20th century has the board game Monopoly seemed more like real life than today. And it doesn't look like the trend of America's increasing corporatocracy is going anywhere, especially after the announcement last week that two of the world's largest seed and chemical companies, Dow and DuPont, have decided to join forces. The merger will create a new company, Dow DuPont, original, which will be worth $130 billion. And just how much of the global market is this new company going to control? According to recent estimates, about 40% of America's corn seed and soybean markets and 17% of the global pesticide market. Monsanto, look out. Already, groups are decrying the merger as a terrible move for the American economy and one which antitrust groups are gearing up to resist. Critics are citing the potential loss of jobs that the merger will result in, as well as an increase in prices for food and a variety of other agricultural and chemical products used by everyday Americans. Opponents also fear that the merger will be a death knell for anti-GMO movements, as more and more of the seed industry falls into a few pro-GMO hands. So will the merger go through, or does our government still have a shred of independence from the corporate juggernaut? To talk to us about the merger and its consequences, we are joined from Florida by the co-host of the Ring of Fire radio show, Mike Papantonio. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
So, Mike, I got to ask you, you have a little bit of history with these companies. What do you think led to Dow and DuPont merging? I mean, DuPont is over 200 years old, Dow over a century old. These companies have been through all sorts of economic challenges. What is it about today's economic climate that would make these two giants join together and create this tag team?
Corporate criminals are simply trying to get better. That's the best way I can put it. Dow and DuPont have collectively, people don't realize, they've been fined or sued almost more than any company operating in the United States. On top of that, they control, as you point out, about 17% of, 40% of the soy in corn production, but 17% of all global pesticides. They basically run the food supply for the industrialized world, not just the U.S., the entire world. This merger is going to give them unprecedented power over our way of life, which is, it's going to allow them to get away with even more criminal activity. I have gone head-to-head with them. The first time I was in trial with them, the jury came back and hit them for $300 million because they had killed so many people in West Virginia. I'm in trial with them right now. The last time we tried the very first case was just about a month ago, and the jury came back against them again because DuPont had entirely devastated a waterway by taking a toxin that they knew was toxic. This is how criminal this corporation is. They took a toxin they knew was toxic. They knew it would cause cancer, and they dumped it into the Ohio River, knowing it was moving into people's drinking water. Their documents were very clear to that. They understood every aspect of it, about it, and decided to do it anyway. So I guess the quick answer is criminals attract criminals, and you have two criminal corporations that have been crimes ranging from price fixing, tax evasion, environmental destruction, OSHA violations of every kind that you can imagine, poisoning entire cities with their toxic waste. That's just the short list of crimes. So it is the new American corporate mentality, I guess is the best way to put it.
It's pretty incredible. Now I got to ask, as these companies grow like this, are they less and less able to be, reined in by government or oversight or citizens? Like, is there going to be any rules for them as they get this big?
That is a brilliant question. It is right in point. When we started hearing too big to fail, corporate America looked at that as an invitation. You had people like Eric Holder who would not prosecute anybody dressed up in an Armani suit. And so the rest of the corporation said, well, look, we're white-collar criminals too. The bigger we get, the better it's going to be for us, the less of a target we become. And these are people who understand they are targets. In the 1990s, DuPont was hit with hundreds of lawsuits after a wave of reports that one of its fungicides was causing widespread environmental damage and damage to people. The company had to take a product off the market. They paid more than $500 million in compensation, and they were fined a mere $115 million, which was almost a month's worth of profit for that particular product. So your point is excellent. The point is, if they can, it's like a school of fish. When you see fish school up, they do that so they can look bigger. And it's more difficult to penetrate that school of fish. And the same thing is happening here. First of all, you have a Justice Department that is absolutely set on prosecuting every damn body in the world who smokes who smokes weed, but on the other side is totally unwilling to go after white-collar criminals. DuPont has been responsible for more toxic waste dumping than any company in the 1980s. In 1991, DuPont was fined $1.9 million for dumping acids and toxic solvents into New Jersey. And you know how much they saved by merely paying that $1.9 million? They saved billions because they passed the cleanup cost on to consumers. It's called externalizing costs. They don't pay for it. They let people pay for it by bad health and having to pay tax money to clean it up. DuPont and Dow operate exactly the same way. In 2000, DuPont agreed to pay $1.5 million to settle an EPA violations where they dumped more than 23,000 gallons of sulfuric acid into the air in Kentucky and put people in the hospital. But we have a Justice Department that doesn't look at a white, and this, Loretta Lynch is no better, by the way. Everybody thinks, oh, Loretta Lynch, she's an African-American woman. woman. She's simply going to feel our pain. No, Loretta Lynch comes from the same ilk. She comes from the same corporate entities that do so much harm to people every day and get away with it by paying a $1.5 million fine. That's very typical today. And your question is right on point. And I got to promise you something. Nobody else in the media is asking that question that you just asked. Why did they do it? The question is...
That is why we're here watching the Hawks, Mike. So I got to ask you very quickly. Last question: what is if you're a betting man? Give me the odds. What's the likelihood that this merger will go through, or will antitrust groups be able to push?
Well, from what I understand, this merger has already gone through. All right, and as you can see, as a man who's been in court with these people, you've got evil and evil teaming up together to create super evil, right? They get these little slap on the wrist fines, sometimes for 1 million, sometimes for 835 million, right? But this is the same thing that we hear about from those pharmaceutical companies, right? They make these variations of these drugs that kill all these people, right? And say in the first 3 years, they make $60 billion. So they go to court and they get fined $2 billion. That's less of a percentage than what you tip when you go out to eat at a restaurant. Right? So that's how laughable that these fines are, and they're not really doing anything. Okay. Now I'm just going to show you a couple other things, and I'm going to get back to a couple more points here. Now I saw this.
As you know,
as you can see here, I don't need to play any of this. COP21. Okay, this is a representative, right? I think, from what I gathered from watching this video, from Dow Chemical. And he's talking about Dow Chemical's contributions to COP21. And in case you're wondering what's COP21, well, that's what happened with this climate meeting in Paris. Which, by the way, no one was able to attend or boycott or listen to because of the terrorist attacks. How convenient, right? COP21, Sustained Development, Agenda 21, this is all the same thing. This is all the same thing that everybody is saying a conspiracy, even though there's real videos from real people, from real companies, as you see right here, addressing this very issue. Okay? So this whole full-on agenda with Agenda 21, no big shocker here that one of the leading companies involved in this GMO mess is a big part of, right? Because if you don't, and this is just more proof showing y'all this thing that they put on the United Nations website about wanting to depopulate the planet is very real. And in my opinion, is part of the reason why they don't want you to know what you're eating. Now, I don't want to digress too far off my point, so I'm just going to go back and I'm going to show you this. This is Dawn Rittenhouse. She works for DuPont. She is the director of sustainability. Right? COP21, Agenda 21, sustainable development. These are all the same things. They all have different names so they can keep you confused and chasing your tail, and everybody can call it something different, kind of like with ISIS, ISIL, Al-Qaeda, Daesh, right? It's all the same thing, but they give them all these different names to get people confused, and no one really can make sense of what is what. And it's the same thing with this Agenda 21 stuff. And so now you've seen here that DuPont and Dow Chemical are deeply rooted in this Agenda 21. They have just joined forces. And as you saw in the video previous, with the lawyer who had taken those companies to trial several times, they basically have a big stranglehold on a good chunk of the food that not just comes to America, but to the world. That's how big that company is now when Dow and DuPont merged together. Okay. I think I have another video here, but all they really need to do to completely take over the world is to join up with Monsanto. Now, back to this. Now, I'd like to leave it to my viewers, to anybody who views this video. I like to leave some information out there for you guys to look up for yourself and not just see the stuff that I post in my videos. I don't want you to have to go search for all of the information, because what's the point of watching my video if you do? But if you do have to research some of the information for yourself, it becomes a lot more real. And I just want to point out a couple of things here. Okay. Number one, as a lot of my viewers know, and for the new ones who don't, I think I am a supporter of the Convention of the States movement. I believe that the best way to start to reel in an overreaching federal government is to give some power back to the states. Okay? Now, and I want you guys to check this out for yourself. You can just Google this actually. Now there is what they call evidence on the Convention of the States YouTube's website and YouTube channel, of their website and YouTube channel, that Antonin Scalia supported Convention of the States. Now granted, their quotes of Antonin Scalia saying that he supported Convention of the States are all true and legitimate quotes. The only problem is most of the quotes from Antonin Scalia about supporting Convention of the States are back from like 79, 1980, before he was a Supreme Court justice and back when he was just a law professor. If you go back to him speaking about the topic of Convention of the States in 2014 and 2015, he makes a lot of comments about Convention of the States and basically said, I don't support it at all, and I think it's a horrible idea. And I implore you guys to go look at this for yourself if you're interested, because this is all true information. I looked it up for myself just because I was curious, and I'd like you guys to be able to look it up for yourself as well. Now, another thing you should look up is antitrust in the Supreme Court. Okay? And that's another thing that you guys need to check out, because this $835 million litigation that Dow Chemical was going through was an antitrust suit for price-fixing polyurethane. Now, if you go through and you check out information about Antonin Scalia and antitrust, from the articles that I've seen and from the information that I've looked at, it appears to me that Antonin Scalia was actually a big he was a big voice against antitrust suits and often struck them down. And it seems clear here that Dow Chemical, one of the big three, and this GMO takeover of the planet, basically, where the government wants to hide what you eat, even though supposedly it's safe, they stopped. They dropped out of court because they said Antonin Scalia is not there. He doesn't have our back. He's not going to bail us out again, so we're just going to go ahead and settle. Now, keeping in mind that back in 79 and 80, he was for Convention of the States. And now, 2014 to 2015, he's totally against it, but yet he's knocking down antitrust suits from these big companies who have a lot to do with this United Nations Agenda 21 GMO thing. It seems to me that it's very possible that we've all been misled. It sounds to me like there's a bunch of rhetoric being pushed by the mainstream media that a lot of us in the alternative media have been buying into that's not really true. And that, in fact, this man was actually one of the puppets for the elite teams playing against us, and we don't even realize it because the mainstream media is lying to us. So that's all I really have to say about it, guys. I'll leave some links for the stuff I showed. You check out the other stuff that I didn't show, and check it out for yourself. Thanks for watching, and y'all take care.